Power is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. People talk about it as if it belongs only to kings, politicians, or the wealthy. In reality, power operates everywhere. It shapes conversations, relationships, workplaces, families, and social groups. It determines who is listened to, who is ignored, who sets direction, and who reacts. Most people experience power daily without ever learning how it works. That ignorance is not harmless. It leaves people confused about why the same patterns repeat again and again, why confidence often beats competence, why kindness is admired but rarely obeyed, why those who hesitate lose ground even when they are right. Centuries ago, Machiavelli did not invent these truths. He observed them. He stripped away comforting illusions and described human behavior as it actually is, not as people wish it to be. His insights were never meant to flatter, they were meant to clarify. This audiobook is not about manipulation, cruelty, or domination. It is about awareness. These truths are brutal because they contradict popular moral storytelling. Yet they persist because human nature has not changed. People still seek security, status, and certainty. They still follow strength, reward confidence, and test weakness. Understanding these patterns does not make you dangerous, it makes you difficult to deceive. Throughout this audiobook, you will hear observations that feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is the signal that something real is being touched. You are not being told what to do. You are being shown how power quietly operates so you can recognize it, navigate it, and avoid being controlled by it unconsciously. Power is not about force. It is about perception, timing, and human behavior. Once you see these dynamics clearly, you cannot unsee them. And clarity, more than force or ambition, is where real control begins.
Truth number 1. People respect power more than kindness. Kindness is appreciated, but power is respected. This distinction explains countless broken relationships, failed leaders, and ignored advice. Human beings value kindness emotionally, yet they organize behavior around power. When kindness is not backed by strength, it is often reinterpreted as weakness. People may like you, but they will not follow you. They may praise your intentions, but they will test your boundaries. Machiavelli understood that respect is rooted in perceived strength, not goodwill. This does not mean kindness is useless. It means kindness without authority invites exploitation. Those who hold power understand this instinctively. They may act generously, but they never allow generosity to undermine their position. People comply not because someone is nice, but because consequences exist. When kindness is paired with strength, it becomes effective. When it stands alone, it becomes negotiable. This truth is uncomfortable because people want to believe goodness alone commands loyalty. History and daily life prove otherwise. Respect follows structure, certainty, and the ability to enforce limits. Kindness earns affection. Power earns obedience. Those who confuse the two often wonder why they are admired but not taken seriously.
Truth number 2. Fear is more reliable than loyalty. Loyalty feels noble. It sounds stable. It appears comforting. But loyalty, by its nature, is conditional. It depends on emotion, shared interest, memory, and convenience. Fear, on the other hand, is simple. It does not require belief, affection, or agreement. It requires only awareness of consequence. This is why fear has always been a more reliable tool of control than loyalty, even when people publicly deny it. Machiavelli observed that people promise loyalty easily, especially when it costs them nothing. They pledge support when conditions are favorable and distance themselves when circumstances change. Loyalty fades when pressure rises. Fear does not. Fear remains active as long as consequences remain believable. Human beings are wired to avoid loss more strongly than they pursue reward. Loyalty is rooted in reward. Fear is rooted in survival. When people feel secure, they act generously. When they feel threatened, they act predictably. This predictability is what makes fear reliable. It narrows behavior. It reduces risk-taking. It enforces compliance without requiring emotional investment. Those in power throughout history have relied on this instinct, not because they enjoy cruelty, but because it works even when affection disappears. This truth makes people uncomfortable because it challenges moral narratives. We want to believe loyalty is stronger than fear. We want to believe people stand by principles and relationships regardless of pressure. Reality is harsher. Under enough stress, most people choose safety over allegiance. They abandon leaders who cannot protect them and align with forces that can. This is not betrayal, it is instinct. However, fear alone is dangerous if misused. Excessive fear breeds resentment, secrecy, and eventual rebellion. Machiavelli understood that fear must be controlled, not chaotic. The goal is not terror, but restraint, the awareness that crossing certain boundaries has consequences. When fear is stable and impersonal, it creates order. When it becomes emotional or excessive, it destabilizes power. Loyalty is fragile because it depends on constant maintenance. Fear is durable because it reinforces itself. Those who understand power do not demand love. They ensure limits are respected. They may welcome loyalty, but they never rely on it. This is why fear, uncomfortable as it sounds, has always outlasted promises, admiration, and goodwill.
Truth number 3. Most people prefer illusion over truth. Truth is often praised, but rarely welcomed. People claim they want honesty, transparency, and clarity, yet their behavior reveals something different. Most people prefer illusion because illusion protects identity, comfort, and emotional stability. Truth threatens these things. It forces change, accountability, and discomfort. Machiavelli understood that human beings are not driven primarily by accuracy, but by reassurance. They want narratives that justify who they are, where they stand, and why their choices make sense. When truth challenges those narratives, it is resisted, ignored, or attacked. This resistance is not intellectual, it is psychological. Illusion feels safe because it maintains continuity. It allows people to move forward without questioning themselves. Truth interrupts that flow. It exposes weakness, error, and limitation. That exposure feels dangerous even when it is necessary. This is why blunt honesty often fails, while carefully shaped appearances succeed. People do not respond to what is real, they respond to what feels manageable. Those who hold power understand this instinctively. They do not rely on raw truth alone. They frame reality in ways that people can accept without feeling destabilized. This does not always require deception. Often it requires omission, emphasis, or timing. Saying everything at once overwhelms. Revealing selectively preserves control. The discomfort around this truth comes from moral discomfort. People want to believe truth naturally wins, that if something is correct, it will be accepted. History shows otherwise. Those who speak truth without regard for perception are often ignored or punished. Those who manage perception guide outcomes. This does not mean truth is useless. It means truth without strategy is fragile. Illusion, when aligned with emotional needs, spreads faster and lasts longer. This is why symbols, stories, and appearances carry more influence than facts alone. People remember what reassures them, not what unsettles them. Power operates where perception meets emotion.
Those who ignore this dynamic often lose influence while insisting they are right. Those who understand it learn when to reveal, when to soften, and when to remain silent. In the end, illusion is not chosen because people are stupid. It is chosen because it feels safer than confronting the full weight of reality.
Truth number 4. Power belongs to those who control perception. Power does not belong to the strongest, the smartest, or even the most capable. It belongs to those who control how reality is perceived. Human beings do not react to facts directly. They react to their interpretation of facts. This is the gap where power lives. Machiavelli understood that controlling perception is often more effective than controlling events themselves. If people believe you are strong, competent, or inevitable, they behave as if it is true. That behavior then reinforces the perception, creating a self-sustaining loop. Reality bends not through force, but through belief. Most people assume perception follows reality. In practice, reality often follows perception. When someone is seen as powerful, others defer, hesitate, and adjust around them. Opportunities open, resistance weakens. Conversely, when someone is perceived as weak or uncertain, even correct decisions lose authority. Doubt spreads faster than evidence. This is why leaders who lose control of perception rarely recover, even if their capabilities remain unchanged. People stop trusting their direction because trust was never rooted in facts alone. Those who understand power invest heavily in appearances. This does not mean constant deception. It means intentional presentation. How you speak, when you speak, what you emphasize and what you ignore all shape perception. Silence can signal confidence or fear depending on timing. Action can signal strength or desperation depending on context. Perception is fragile and highly sensitive to cues. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges the idea that merit naturally rises. People want to believe that ability speaks for itself. In reality, ability must be seen, framed, and reinforced to have influence. Those who refuse to manage perception often complain that they are misunderstood or overlooked. They are not wrong, they are unprotected. Power also depends on consistency. Inconsistent behavior fractures perception. Predictable patterns stabilize it. This is why disciplined restraint often appears stronger than emotional expression. Calm signals control. Control signals authority. Authority shapes outcomes. Once perception shifts, correcting it requires far more effort than establishing it early. This is why power is often lost suddenly after long erosion. People notice perception before they notice collapse. In the end, power is less about what you can do and more about what others believe you can do. Those who control perception do not need to announce strength. It is assumed. And when strength is assumed, resistance fades before conflict even begins. Truth number 5. Dependence creates obedience. Dependence is one of the most reliable foundations of power because it operates quietly and appears voluntary. When people rely on someone or something for security, resources, approval, or direction, obedience follows naturally. Machiavelli understood that force is expensive and unstable, but dependence is efficient and enduring. People do not need to be threatened when they feel they have something to lose. The fear of losing access, support, or stability often governs behavior more effectively than direct punishment ever could. Dependence reshapes decision-making. When individuals depend on a source for income, protection, belonging, or validation, their choices narrow. They become cautious. They avoid risk. They suppress disagreement. This is not because they are weak, but because survival instincts activate. Obedience emerges as a rational response to perceived vulnerability. Those in power recognize this pattern and cultivate systems where others rely on them, not out of cruelty, but out of strategy.
Once dependence is established, control requires less effort. People self-regulate. They anticipate expectations without being told. This is why institutions, hierarchies, and leaders prioritize becoming indispensable. When alternatives are limited or unclear, loyalty becomes irrelevant. Behavior aligns automatically. This truth is uncomfortable because it exposes how freedom erodes without overt force. People often believe they are choosing freely while their options are quietly constrained. Dependence feels safe at first. It reduces uncertainty and responsibility. Over time, however, it reduces autonomy. Those who control access gain leverage over those who need it. Machiavelli did not suggest eliminating all dependence. He understood it as a tool. Used carefully, it stabilizes systems. Used excessively, it breeds resentment and eventual resistance. Smart power maintains balance. It ensures reliance without suffocation. Those who over-tighten control invite rebellion when alternatives appear. Dependence also explains why people defend systems that limit them. When identity and survival are tied to a structure, criticism feels threatening. Obedience becomes internalized. People rationalize their position because questioning it would destabilize their sense of safety. This is why dependence is more durable than fear alone. Fear reacts to threat. Dependence reshapes identity. Understanding this truth allows you to recognize where power is operating invisibly. It also protects you from becoming trapped by systems you did not consciously choose. Power grows strongest not when people are forced to comply, but when they feel they cannot afford not to.
Truth number 6. People forgive outcomes faster than they forgive weakness. People claim to value fairness, intention, and effort, but their behavior tells a different story. Human judgment is shaped less by what happens and more by how strength is displayed while it happens. Machiavelli observed that people are remarkably forgiving of harsh outcomes when they believe those outcomes came from strength, decisiveness, or necessity. What they struggle to forgive is weakness. Weakness signals instability. It creates uncertainty, and uncertainty threatens security. When a leader, authority, or individual appears weak, people lose confidence not only in that person, but in the structure surrounding them. Even well-intentioned decisions are questioned when they come from hesitation or insecurity. Conversely, firm decisions, even painful ones, are often accepted when they are delivered with clarity and conviction. This is not because people enjoy suffering. It is because certainty feels safer than ambiguity. A bad outcome with clear leadership feels manageable. A mild outcome delivered with doubt feels dangerous. This explains why people tolerate strict systems more easily than inconsistent ones. Predictability reduces anxiety. Weakness disrupts predictability. This truth is uncomfortable because it clashes with moral ideals. People want to believe compassion and vulnerability inspire loyalty. In reality, unguarded vulnerability in positions of responsibility often triggers loss of respect. People may sympathize emotionally, but they adjust behavior strategically. They begin to test boundaries, resist direction, or seek alternative leadership. Forgiveness follows strength because strength reassures. Weakness invites challenge. This does not mean compassion has no place. It means compassion must be paired with authority to remain effective. When mercy undermines structure, it backfires. Machiavelli understood that appearances matter more than intentions. If strength is visible, mistakes are contextualized. If weakness is visible, even success feels fragile. This is why people often support leaders who make unpopular but decisive choices over those who hesitate while trying to please everyone. Decisiveness creates confidence. Confidence restores order. Forgiveness flows toward those who appear capable of maintaining control. Weakness, on the other hand, signals future risk.
People instinctively protect themselves by distancing, criticizing, or replacing what feels unstable. Understanding this truth allows you to navigate social and professional environments more clearly. It explains why apologizing excessively erodes authority, why uncertainty invites challenge, and why calm firmness stabilizes perception. Outcomes fade from memory. Strength leaves an impression. In the long run, people do not judge you by every result. They judge you by whether you appeared capable of handling responsibility when it mattered.
Truth number 7. Authority is often borrowed, not earned. Authority appears solid, but much of it is inherited, assumed, or temporarily borrowed rather than earned through competence or wisdom. Machiavelli recognized that people rarely investigate the origins of authority. They respond to symbols, titles, rituals, and consensus cues. Once authority is recognized publicly, individuals tend to accept it privately. This acceptance happens even when the authority figure has done little to justify it personally. Humans are social learners. When they see others defer, they follow. Authority spreads through imitation before it is tested by results. This is why uniforms, credentials, platforms, and status markers carry disproportionate influence. They shortcut judgment. People assume legitimacy because questioning authority requires effort, risk, and responsibility. Borrowed authority relies on perception rather than proof. It is maintained as long as the symbols remain intact and the crowd continues to comply. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges the belief that authority naturally reflects merit. In reality, many people rise because they are positioned correctly, not because they are exceptional. Once in place, authority becomes self-reinforcing. Subordinates adapt behavior. Peers hesitate. Critics soften. The system bends around the role. This does not mean competence is irrelevant. It means competence often arrives later, after authority has already been granted. Those who understand power learn to leverage borrowed authority while building real capability quietly. They do not wait for permission to act effectively. They use the appearance of legitimacy to create space for results. Conversely, those who refuse to acknowledge borrowed authority often isolate themselves. They demand proof in environments where perception already decides. This puts them at a disadvantage, not because they are wrong, but because they are misaligned with how humans coordinate. Borrowed authority is fragile if unmanaged. It must be protected through consistency and restraint. When symbols are contradicted by behavior, authority collapses quickly. People forgive ignorance more easily than they forgive inconsistency. Once doubt spreads, borrowed authority evaporates faster than it was granted. Machiavelli understood that authority must either be reinforced by outcomes or replaced by fear, dependence, or perception control. Otherwise, it dissolves. Recognizing this truth allows you to navigate hierarchies without resentment. You stop assuming authority always reflects superiority. You start observing how legitimacy is signaled, maintained, and lost. This awareness protects you from blind obedience and unnecessary rebellion. It also shows you how influence actually moves through systems. Authority is not always deserved, but it is always consequential. Those who ignore its symbolic nature often miscalculate risk. Those who understand it can operate effectively without being intimidated or naive.
Truth 8. Moral language is frequently a disguise. Moral language is one of the most powerful tools humans use to influence behavior, yet it is often misunderstood. People assume moral arguments are primarily about right and wrong. In practice, they are often about control, justification, and positioning. Machiavelli observed that moral language is frequently used not to guide behavior honestly, but to mask underlying motives. When people invoke morality loudly, they are often attempting to legitimize their interests while discrediting others without appearing self-interested. Moral framing gives actions emotional authority. It turns preference into principle and strategy into virtue. This makes resistance more difficult because opposing a moral claim feels like opposing goodness itself. Human beings are deeply sensitive to social approval. Being seen as immoral carries social risk. Those who understand power recognize this and use moral language to shape perception rather than to clarify truth. This does not mean morality is meaningless. It means moral language is often instrumentalized. People rarely announce their desire for advantage directly. They frame it as fairness, justice, protection, or responsibility. These words sound neutral, but they carry emotional weight. Once accepted, they justify control without force. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges the idea that moral appeals are always sincere. People want to believe that those who speak most passionately about ethics are guided purely by principle. Reality is more complex. Moral certainty often hides insecurity, fear of loss, or desire for dominance. When moral language becomes rigid, it stops inviting discussion and starts enforcing compliance. Machiavelli understood that moral outrage is an effective way to silence opposition. Those who challenge the moral frame are painted as dangerous, selfish, or corrupt, regardless of their actual behavior. This shifts debate from facts to character, where perception matters more than accuracy. Power grows when moral narratives become unquestionable. Those who master power learn to recognize when moral language is being used as a shield rather than a guide. They listen for incentives behind the language. They observe who benefits from a moral claim and who is restricted by it. This awareness does not require cynicism. It requires clarity. You can respect ethical principles while remaining alert to how they are deployed. Moral language becomes dangerous when it is immune to examination. Once a moral frame cannot be questioned, it becomes a tool of control. Understanding this truth protects you from manipulation and emotional coercion. It also teaches restraint. Those who rely too heavily on moral posturing often lose credibility over time. When actions contradict language, trust erodes. Power built on moral disguise is unstable. Power grounded in clear incentives and honest limits lasts longer. Recognizing the difference allows you to navigate influence without confusion or blind obedience.
Truth number 9. The crowd punishes hesitation. Hesitation is often interpreted as thoughtfulness by those who experience it internally, but it is rarely perceived that way by others. To the crowd, hesitation signals uncertainty, and uncertainty invites challenge. Machiavelli understood that groups instinctively seek direction, especially in moments of tension or change. When leadership hesitates, the crowd does not become patient, it becomes restless. That restlessness quickly turns into doubt, criticism, or defiance. Human beings are uncomfortable with ambiguity. They look to authority figures to reduce uncertainty, not reflect it. When direction is unclear, people fill the gap themselves, often in chaotic or self-serving ways. This is why hesitation is punished, even when it comes from careful consideration. The crowd does not reward internal struggle. It responds to visible confidence. Confidence reassures, hesitation destabilizes. This dynamic explains why leaders who act decisively are often forgiven for mistakes, while those who delay are blamed even when outcomes are reasonable. Action creates momentum. Delay creates suspicion. People begin to question competence, motives, and control. Once that questioning spreads, authority weakens rapidly. Machiavelli observed that crowds are emotional organisms. They respond to tone and movement more than logic. A firm decision gives them something to organize around. A pause gives them space to project fear, frustration, and resentment. This truth is uncomfortable because it clashes with ideals of careful reasoning. People want to believe that patience and deliberation are always valued. In reality, they are valued only when they are invisible. When hesitation is visible, it is read as weakness. This does not mean decisions should be reckless. It means indecision should not be performed publicly. Those who understand power take time to think privately and act decisively in public. They manage the appearance of certainty even when internally weighing options. The crowd does not need to see the process, it needs to see the outcome. Hesitation also invites rivals. In competitive environments, delay signals opportunity. Others step forward, fill the vacuum, and redefine the situation. Once someone else sets the narrative, regaining control becomes difficult. This is why timing matters as much as accuracy. Acting slightly early with confidence often beats acting perfectly late. The crowd rewards momentum because momentum feels like progress. Understanding this truth allows you to separate internal caution from external presentation. You can think deeply without appearing uncertain. You can pause without surrendering direction. Those who master this balance maintain authority without sacrificing judgment. Those who hesitate openly often lose influence before they finish deciding.
Truth number 10. Silence creates more control than speech. Speech feels powerful because it fills space, asserts presence, and signals engagement. Silence feels passive, even weak, to those who do not understand power. In reality, silence often creates more control than words ever could. Machiavelli observed that those who speak less are harder to predict, harder to challenge, and harder to manipulate. Silence with intention shifts pressure outward. It forces others to reveal themselves. When you speak constantly, you expose your position, your priorities, and your limits. When you remain silent, others project, speculate, and adjust without knowing where you stand. This uncertainty creates leverage. Human beings are uncomfortable with silence. They interpret it as judgment, confidence, or hidden knowledge. In response, they often over-explain, justify, or concede ground. Silence becomes a mirror. The more someone talks into it, the more information they reveal. This information is power. Those who control silence control the pace and direction of interaction. This truth is uncomfortable because people are taught that communication is always good. They are encouraged to explain themselves, clarify intentions, and express feelings. While these behaviors have value in personal relationships, they often weaken leverage in competitive or hierarchical environments. Explaining reduces mystery. Mystery sustains authority. Machiavelli understood that leaders who speak sparingly appear more deliberate. Their words carry weight because they are not constant. When they do speak, attention sharpens. This is not accidental, it is strategic restraint. Silence also prevents unnecessary commitment. Words lock positions in place. Silence keeps options open. Those who speak too early often trap themselves in narratives they later regret. Those who wait gain time to observe shifts, gather information, and choose moments carefully. Silence does not mean withdrawal, it means presence without exposure. It signals that you are not rushed, not reactive, and not seeking validation. In many situations, this calm absence of explanation is interpreted as strength. Others assume you know more than you are saying. That assumption alters their behavior. Silence can also defuse conflict. When confronted with provocation, speech escalates. Silence forces the other side to confront its own intensity. Often, aggression collapses when it is not fed. This is why silence unsettles those seeking reaction. They lose control of the interaction. Understanding this truth allows you to stop overperforming certainty. You learn that not every moment requires a response. You let others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. In environments where power dynamics matter, silence is not emptiness, it is space. And space, when held deliberately, becomes control.
Truth number 11. People follow confidence, not accuracy. Human beings say they want truth, expertise, and correctness, but their behavior consistently shows otherwise. In moments of uncertainty, people follow confidence more readily than accuracy. Machiavelli understood that when outcomes are unclear, emotional reassurance matters more than factual precision. Confidence signals safety. Accuracy requires verification. Most people do not have the time, energy, or courage to verify. They choose the person who appears certain. This is not because people are foolish, it is because uncertainty is psychologically exhausting. Confidence reduces mental strain by offering a clear direction to move toward. Accuracy without confidence feels fragile. It raises questions rather than answers them. In group settings, hesitation or excessive nuance is often interpreted as incompetence, even when it reflects deeper understanding. Confidence statements simplify complexity. They make the world feel manageable. This is why confident leaders can be wrong repeatedly and still retain influence, while accurate but uncertain voices are ignored. Confidence creates momentum. Momentum attracts followers. Accuracy alone does not. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges merit-based ideals. People want to believe that being right is enough. In reality, being right without conviction rarely changes behavior. Those who understand power do not confuse these roles. They may seek accuracy privately, but they project confidence publicly. They separate internal analysis from external presentation. This allows them to guide action while refining understanding behind the scenes. Over time, confidence shapes reality. When people act on a belief, systems adjust, resources move, structures form. What began as perception becomes fact through coordinated behavior. Accuracy that never mobilizes remains irrelevant. This does not mean truth is meaningless. It means truth must be carried by confidence to have impact. Without confidence, even correct warnings are dismissed as pessimism or doubt. This is why experts are often ignored until crisis forces attention. The absence of confident delivery weakens their influence. Confidence also affects self-perception. When individuals speak decisively, others respond accordingly, reinforcing belief in leadership. When they hedge excessively, responses weaken, confirming doubt. This feedback loop amplifies confidence or erodes it. Machiavelli recognized that people respond to certainty because certainty feels like control. In unstable environments, control is valued above correctness. Understanding this truth does not require deception, it requires presentation. You can hold complexity internally while expressing direction externally. You can remain open to correction without advertising uncertainty. Those who master this balance lead effectively without being reckless. Those who insist on perfect accuracy before acting often arrive too late to matter. In the end, people do not follow those who are most correct. They follow those who make them feel secure enough to move forward.
Truth number 12. Distance increases authority. Familiarity feels comforting, but it quietly erodes authority. Machiavelli understood that distance is not coldness, it is structure. When people have unlimited access to you, they stop perceiving you as elevated. Boundaries blur, expectations shift. Respect slowly turns into entitlement. Distance, when applied intentionally, preserves authority by maintaining separation between roles. Human beings are highly sensitive to hierarchy, even when they deny it. They look for signals that indicate status, importance, and control. Distance provides those signals without force. When access is limited, value gains presence. When availability is constant, value diminishes. This is why leaders who attempt to be overly familiar often struggle to enforce standards. People stop responding to direction and start negotiating. Authority weakens not through rebellion, but through over-familiarity. Distance also creates space for projection. When people do not know everything about you, they fill the gaps with assumptions. Often, those assumptions are more favorable than reality. Mystery amplifies perception. Transparency, when unmanaged, reduces it. Machiavelli recognized that revealing too much of oneself makes authority predictable and therefore less commanding. Predictability invites testing. Distance interrupts that process. This truth is uncomfortable because modern culture equates accessibility with virtue. People are encouraged to be open, relatable, and constantly available. While this builds emotional connection, it often undermines leadership. Authority requires a degree of separation, not emotional cruelty, but professional distance. When distance exists, decisions feel less personal and more structural. This reduces resistance. People comply more easily with systems than with individuals they feel equal to. Distance also protects decision-making. When leaders are too embedded emotionally, they absorb the anxiety, demands, and conflicts of those around them. This clouds judgment. Distance preserves clarity. It allows observation without entanglement. Those who understand power choose when to engage and when to withdraw. Their presence becomes intentional rather than reactive. This selective engagement reinforces status. People notice absence more than presence. Absence creates gravity. It signals that time and attention are valuable resources. This does not mean isolation, it means controlled access. Effective authority balances approachability with separation. Too much distance creates resentment. Too little dissolves structure. Machiavelli emphasized moderation. Distance must be stable, not dramatic. When boundaries are consistent, people adapt. They stop pushing and start respecting limits. Over time, authority solidifies quietly. Those who eliminate distance in pursuit of approval often gain affection but lose influence. Those who maintain it are rarely adored, but they are followed. In environments where control matters, distance is not arrogance, it is architecture.
Truth number 13. Gratitude fades. Self-interest remains. Gratitude is emotional, temporary, and dependent on memory. Self-interest is constant, adaptive, and rooted in survival. Machiavelli understood that people remember benefits less reliably than they remember needs. When someone receives help, gratitude is felt in the moment, but it weakens as circumstances change. Needs, however, persist. As soon as a new desire or threat appears, past favors lose influence. This is not moral failure, it is human nature. People orient behavior toward what protects or advances them now, not what once benefited them. This is why power built solely on goodwill is fragile. Gratitude does not enforce behavior, it inspires sentiment. Sentiment fades quickly under pressure. Those who rely on being appreciated often discover too late that appreciation does not equal obedience or loyalty. Machiavelli observed that people praise generosity openly while quietly pursuing advantage. When interests align, gratitude appears strong. When interests diverge, gratitude evaporates. This explains why alliances dissolve after success and why supporters disappear when conditions worsen. Self-interest recalibrates constantly. It overrides memory when survival, status, or opportunity are at stake. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges the belief that kindness creates lasting obligation. People want to believe that doing good guarantees loyalty. In reality, obligation must be reinforced structurally. Those who understand power do not depend on gratitude, they anticipate its decay. They design systems where cooperation aligns with ongoing self-interest. When people benefit continuously from compliance, behavior remains stable. When benefits stop, so does alignment. Gratitude without reinforcement becomes nostalgia. Power also requires recognizing how gratitude can be manipulated. People express gratitude performatively to maintain access or avoid consequence. Words of appreciation often signal dependence rather than loyalty. Once dependence shifts, the language changes. Machiavelli cautioned against mistaking praise for commitment. Praise costs nothing. Commitment requires sacrifice. Those who confuse the two misjudge stability. This does not mean generosity has no place. It means generosity must be paired with leverage. Benefits must be conditional or recurring to shape behavior over time. Unconditional generosity invites expectation. Expectation breeds entitlement. Entitlement replaces gratitude entirely. This cycle explains why benefactors are often resented rather than respected. The receiver begins to feel constrained rather than thankful. Understanding this truth allows you to give without illusion. You stop expecting memory to regulate behavior. You focus instead on incentives, structure, and alignment. Self-interest is not evil, it is predictable. When you account for it honestly, you stop being surprised by human behavior. Gratitude may color the moment, but self-interest governs the future. Those who understand this do not take fading appreciation personally. They recognize it as a return to baseline. Power lasts when it works with self-interest, rather than hoping gratitude will replace it.
Truth number 14. People test boundaries before respecting them. Boundaries are rarely respected immediately. They are tested first. Machiavelli understood that human beings probe limits instinctively, not always out of malice, but out of curiosity and self-interest. When a boundary is unclear or unenforced, people explore how far they can go. This exploration determines future behavior. Respect is not granted because a boundary is stated. It is granted after a boundary proves consistent. Many people mistake initial pushback as failure. In reality, it is a necessary stage. When someone encounters a limit, their first response is often resistance. They question it, challenge it, or ignore it to see what happens. If the boundary holds, behavior adjusts. If it collapses, expectations shift permanently. This is why early enforcement matters. Once a boundary is violated without consequence, restoring it becomes difficult. People recalibrate their sense of what is acceptable. Machiavelli observed that inconsistency invites escalation. When rules change based on mood, pressure, or sympathy, authority weakens. People stop taking limits seriously because they learn that persistence overrides principle. This truth is uncomfortable because it conflicts with the desire to be liked. Many avoid enforcing boundaries to maintain harmony. The result is the opposite. Unclear boundaries create tension, resentment, and repeated conflict. Clear boundaries create stability. Even those who dislike them adapt once they are predictable. Boundaries also reveal character. When someone respects a firm limit, cooperation becomes possible. When they repeatedly test it, their priorities become visible. This information is valuable. It allows you to decide how much trust or access to grant. Without boundaries, you operate blind. Power grows when limits are defined and upheld calmly. Emotional enforcement weakens boundaries. Calm consistency strengthens them. When consequences are predictable and proportionate, resistance fades. People stop testing because testing no longer yields advantage. Machiavelli understood that boundaries are not about punishment. They are about structure. Structure reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty breeds anxiety. Anxiety drives conflict. When limits are stable, people know where they stand. This reduces friction, even if compliance is not enthusiastic. Respect follows clarity more reliably than goodwill. This applies to leadership, relationships, and personal standards. When you enforce boundaries with restraint, you signal self-respect. That signal influences behavior more than explanation ever could. Over time, people stop pushing not because they fear you, but because they understand you. Boundaries become part of the environment rather than a personal demand. This is when respect becomes automatic. Those who avoid boundary enforcement invite continuous testing. Those who uphold it endure brief resistance and gain long-term stability. Power consolidates not through aggression, but through limits that do not move.
Truth 15. Appearances shape reality. Appearances are often dismissed as superficial, yet they exert a powerful influence on how reality is interpreted and acted upon. Machiavelli understood that people do not experience the world directly, they experience it through signals. Appearance is one of the strongest signals available. How something looks determines how it is treated. This applies to people, decisions, institutions, and even ideas. When appearances are strong, reality is assumed to be strong. When appearances are weak, reality is questioned, regardless of underlying truth. Human beings rely on visual and behavioral cues to make rapid judgments. These judgments guide action long before facts are verified. A confident posture, a composed tone, a well-timed decision all communicate control. Control implies competence. Competence implies authority. Once this chain is established, people behave as if it is true. Their behavior then reinforces the appearance, making it functionally real. This is why appearances are not separate from outcomes, they shape them. This truth is uncomfortable because it challenges the belief that substance naturally prevails. People want to believe that effort, integrity, and correctness speak for themselves. In reality, they require framing to be recognized. Those who ignore appearances often find themselves misunderstood or underestimated. They may be capable, but capability that is not perceived has limited effect. Machiavelli observed that leaders who fail to manage appearances lose influence even when their decisions are sound. Doubt spreads because perception weakens confidence. Once confidence erodes, cooperation falters. Appearances also affect self-perception. When individuals present themselves with certainty and composure, they begin to internalize those qualities. Behavior follows image, image follows behavior. This feedback loop stabilizes identity. Conversely, those who present uncertainty reinforce internal doubt. Over time, this becomes self-limiting. Managing appearances does not require deception, it requires intention. Choosing when to reveal effort, when to display confidence, and when to remain reserved shapes how others respond. Oversharing reduces authority. Emotional exposure invites familiarity rather than respect. This does not mean emotional suppression, it means emotional regulation. Machiavelli emphasized moderation. Appearances must align with action to remain credible. When image and behavior diverge too far, trust collapses. But when they align consistently, appearances amplify reality. They make leadership smoother, decisions easier to accept, and resistance less likely. In social systems, perception becomes reality because people act on what they see. Those actions create consequences. Consequences reinforce belief. This cycle explains why appearances matter more than people want to admit. Ignoring them does not make you principled, it makes you vulnerable. Understanding this truth allows you to shape outcomes without force. You recognize that how you show up is not vanity, it is strategy. When appearances are managed with restraint and consistency, reality follows their lead.
Truth number 16. Strength must be visible. Mercy, optional. Strength that is hidden might as well not exist. Machiavelli understood that unseen strength does not deter challenge, prevent conflict, or inspire compliance. People respond to what they can observe. When strength is visible, behavior adjusts automatically. When it is merely claimed or implied, it invites testing. This is why power must be demonstrated clearly before it can be exercised subtly. Visible strength establishes boundaries without constant enforcement. It signals that limits are real and consequences are credible. Mercy, on the other hand, is discretionary. It can be extended or withheld without undermining authority, but only after strength is established. Mercy offered before strength is proven is often misread as weakness.
Once misread, it invites exploitation rather than gratitude. This truth is uncomfortable because it clashes with the desire to be seen as kind and reasonable. People want to believe that fairness and compassion naturally earn respect. In practice, respect follows demonstrated capability. Compassion without proof of strength feels risky to observers. They wonder whether order can be maintained. That doubt erodes confidence. Machiavelli observed that leaders who begin with leniency often struggle to regain control when challenged. Those who establish strength early gain the freedom to be merciful later. This sequence matters. Strength first creates stability. Mercy later humanizes it. Reversing the order destabilizes power. Visible strength does not require cruelty. It requires clarity and consistency. Enforcing rules once, decisively, prevents the need for repeated enforcement. This reduces overall harshness. When consequences are predictable, most people comply voluntarily. Mercy then becomes a choice rather than a necessity. This dynamic also applies personally. Individuals who demonstrate resolve and boundaries early are treated with respect, even when they later show flexibility. Those who avoid asserting strength find that their kindness is tested repeatedly. They must either harden abruptly or endure continued pressure. Visible strength also shapes group behavior. When authority is clear, conflicts resolve faster because people know where lines are drawn. Ambiguity breeds argument. Clarity breeds compliance. Machiavelli understood that order is maintained not through constant force, but through the awareness that force exists and will be used if required. Mercy is meaningful only when it is clearly optional. When mercy is expected, it loses value and authority. When it is granted selectively, it reinforces power. This does not make power cruel, it makes it stable. Those who understand this truth stop apologizing for firmness. They realize that strength is not the opposite of kindness. It is the condition that allows kindness to function without being abused. In systems where strength is visible, mercy can be practiced without chaos. Where strength is hidden, mercy becomes a liability.
Truth number 17. Control is maintained through uncertainty. Certainty feels comforting, but it reduces control. Machiavelli understood that when people know exactly what will happen, they adjust their behavior to minimize risk and maximize advantage. Predictability empowers others. Uncertainty restrains them. Control is not maintained by constant action or explanation, but by leaving outcomes partially undefined. When consequences are known, but timing and response are uncertain, behavior becomes cautious. People hesitate. They self-regulate. This hesitation is power working quietly. Uncertainty keeps attention focused upward. It prevents complacency. When rules are absolute and responses are automatic, systems become easy to exploit. People learn how far they can go without consequence. When responses are firm but variable, limits remain psychologically active. This does not mean randomness or chaos. It means flexibility within clear boundaries. Machiavelli observed that predictable mercy weakens authority just as predictable punishment does. Both can be planned around. Uncertainty, when paired with credibility, keeps power dynamic. Human beings are risk managers. When outcomes are unclear, they default to safer behavior. This is why ambiguity is often more effective than threat. Threat invites defiance. Ambiguity invites caution. This truth is uncomfortable because people associate uncertainty with instability. In reality, uncertainty can be stabilizing when it exists within a trusted structure. It signals that judgment is being applied, not rules blindly enforced. This perception preserves respect. People feel watched without feeling persecuted. Control also operates through selective disclosure. Revealing intentions too early reduces leverage. Silence preserves it. When people do not know your full position, they cannot anticipate or counter it easily. They adjust conservatively. This is why powerful figures rarely explain themselves fully. Explanation reduces mystery. Mystery sustains influence. Uncertainty also prevents coalition building. When responses are unpredictable, coordination against authority becomes risky. People hesitate to align openly because outcomes are unclear. This fragmentation preserves control without confrontation. Machiavelli understood that uncertainty must be credible to work. Empty ambiguity invites challenge. Controlled uncertainty requires a foundation of visible strength and consistency. Without that foundation, ambiguity feels like confusion. With it, ambiguity feels deliberate. Those who master power know when to clarify and when to remain undefined. They do not rush to resolve every tension. They allow uncertainty to shape behavior quietly. This does not mean manipulation for its own sake. It means recognizing that human behavior responds more to perceived risk than to stated intention. In environments where control matters, uncertainty is not a flaw. It is a tool. Used carefully, it reduces resistance, preserves authority, and maintains order without constant force.
Truth number 18. Familiarity reduces power. Familiarity creates comfort, but comfort weakens authority. Machiavelli understood that the more people feel they fully know you, the less power you hold over them. Familiarity dissolves mystery, and mystery is one of the foundations of influence. When individuals become too accessible, too predictable, or too emotionally exposed, they stop being perceived as elevated. They become ordinary. Ordinary figures are questioned, negotiated with, and challenged. Power requires a degree of separation to function effectively. Human beings instinctively rank others. They look for cues of status, control, and importance. Familiarity erases those cues. When someone is always available, always explaining, always present, their presence loses weight. Scarcity creates value. Distance preserves gravity. This does not require arrogance or isolation. It requires intentional limits. Machiavelli observed that leaders who seek excessive closeness often lose authority without realizing it. They believe trust is built through transparency and intimacy. While this may strengthen emotional bonds, it weakens command. People begin to feel equal rather than guided. Once equality is assumed, compliance becomes optional. This truth is uncomfortable because it contradicts modern ideals of relatability. People are encouraged to be open, vulnerable, and constantly engaged. While this builds connection, it often erodes respect in hierarchical or competitive environments. Authority depends on role clarity. Familiarity blurs roles. When roles blur, expectations shift, boundaries weaken, power disperses. Familiarity also invites projection of flaws. The more people see your internal struggles, doubts, and inconsistencies, the less they attribute competence to you. This does not mean hiding humanity completely. It means choosing what to reveal and when. Strategic restraint protects perception. Machiavelli emphasized that leaders should be seen, not consumed. Presence should be intentional, not constant. This preserves curiosity and respect. Familiarity also increases emotional leverage against you. Those who feel close feel entitled to influence decisions, challenge authority, or demand exceptions. This creates internal conflict and erodes consistency. Distance protects impartiality. It allows decisions to be perceived as structural rather than personal. This reduces resistance and resentment. Power does not require coldness, it requires structure.
Those who maintain appropriate distance are not necessarily loved, but they are respected. Respect stabilizes systems. Affection does not. Over time, familiarity makes authority fragile because it relies on ongoing emotional approval. Distance makes authority durable because it relies on position and consistency. Understanding this truth allows you to balance accessibility with control. You stop oversharing, you stop over-explaining, you become selective with presence. In doing so, you regain leverage without force. Familiarity may feel warm, but warmth fades. Power requires form. Without form, influence dissolves.
Truth number 19. People submit to systems they do not question. Power becomes most effective when it no longer feels like power. Machiavelli understood that the strongest control is exercised through systems that appear natural, inevitable, or unquestionable. When people stop questioning the structure around them, they stop resisting it. Submission becomes automatic, not because force is applied, but because alternatives are no longer imagined. Systems shape behavior quietly. Rules, routines, hierarchies, and norms guide action long before conscious choice appears. When these systems are accepted as just how things are, obedience feels voluntary. People follow procedures without asking who designed them or who benefits from them. This is where power becomes invisible. Human beings conserve mental energy by accepting defaults. Questioning requires effort and risk. Compliance requires neither. Over time, repeated compliance becomes habit. Habit becomes identity. People begin to defend the system because it feels familiar and stabilizing, even when it restricts them. This truth is uncomfortable because it reveals how control persists without overt oppression. People often believe they are free because no one is actively forcing them, yet their choices are already shaped by invisible constraints. Machiavelli observed that rulers who rely on systems rather than individuals face less resistance. Systems depersonalize authority. People may resent a person, but they adapt to a structure. Blame diffuses. Responsibility blurs. Resistance weakens. This is why bureaucracies, traditions, and procedures are powerful. They operate without emotion. They do not argue. They simply exist. Over time, people internalize their logic. Questioning the system begins to feel irrational or dangerous. Those who do question it are labeled disruptive, unrealistic, or ungrateful. Social pressure enforces compliance more efficiently than punishment ever could. Systems also create predictability. Predictability feels safe. Even restrictive systems can feel preferable to uncertainty. This is why people often cling to flawed structures rather than risk change. Change threatens identity and stability. Power exploits this preference by making systems appear permanent. Machiavelli understood that once people believe a system cannot be changed, they stop trying. Control then requires minimal effort. However, systems must be maintained carefully. When contradictions become too visible, questioning resumes. When benefits disappear, loyalty erodes. Power built on unquestioned systems must adapt quietly to survive. Those who understand this truth learn to recognize systems shaping their behavior. They ask who designed them, who benefits, and what assumptions are being enforced. This awareness restores choice. It allows navigation rather than blind submission. Power persists longest where questioning feels unnecessary. Recognizing that fact is the first step toward reclaiming autonomy without confrontation.
Truth number 20. Power is lost slowly, then suddenly.
Power rarely disappears in a dramatic moment. It erodes quietly, almost invisibly, long before collapse becomes obvious. Machiavelli understood that authority weakens through small concessions, ignored warnings, and gradual loss of credibility. Each moment feels insignificant on its own. Together, they form a pattern of decay. Those in power often believe they are still in control because nothing has exploded yet. This belief is dangerous. Power does not vanish when challenges appear. It vanishes when challenges stop being taken seriously. Early signs of erosion are subtle. Rules are bent without consequence. Decisions are questioned openly. Boundaries are negotiated instead of enforced. At first, this seems manageable, even reasonable. Compromise feels intelligent. Flexibility feels humane. But each concession teaches observers that limits are movable. Once that lesson is learned, behavior shifts. People push further, not out of rebellion, but because the environment invites it. Machiavelli observed that authority collapses not when resistance appears, but when resistance becomes routine. By the time defiance is visible, power has already weakened internally. This truth is uncomfortable because it exposes how decline often comes from good intentions. Leaders delay enforcement to avoid conflict. They excuse behavior to preserve harmony. They assume respect will return naturally. It rarely does. Respect erodes faster than it rebuilds. Power also depends on perception, and perception changes gradually. People stop believing in authority before they openly reject it. They comply outwardly while disengaging inwardly. Support becomes passive. Loyalty becomes conditional. When a triggering event finally occurs, collapse appears sudden, but it is only the visible result of long decay. This is why once lost, power is difficult to recover. Restoring authority requires far more effort than maintaining it. Trust must be rebuilt, boundaries must be re-established, resistance must be overcome. Machiavelli understood that prevention is easier than repair. Vigilance preserves power, neglect dissolves it. This applies not only to leadership, but to personal standards, influence, and credibility. When you tolerate small violations of your own limits, you teach others how to treat you. Over time, those lessons harden into expectation. Reversing them later invites resistance and conflict. Power must be maintained actively, not through force, but through consistency. Those who hold power longest are not the most aggressive, they are the most attentive. They notice early signs of erosion and respond calmly before decay spreads. Power is rarely stolen, it is surrendered in increments. By the time the loss is obvious, it is already complete. Understanding this truth allows you to protect influence before it collapses. You stop waiting for crises and start addressing patterns. In doing so, you preserve authority quietly and avoid the shock of sudden loss.
Truth 21. The most dangerous power is unseen. The most effective power does not announce itself. It does not threaten, command loudly, or demand recognition. It operates quietly, shaping behavior without drawing attention to its source. Machiavelli understood that overt power invites resistance, while unseen power invites compliance. When people are aware they are being controlled, they push back. When they are unaware, they adapt willingly. This is what makes unseen power so dangerous and so stable. Unseen power works by influencing assumptions, norms, and expectations. It defines what feels normal, acceptable, or inevitable. Once these frames are established, people regulate themselves. They censor their own thoughts, limit their own actions, and correct each other without instruction. Control becomes decentralized. No single authority needs to intervene because the system enforces itself. This is the highest form of power because it requires the least effort to maintain. Human beings prefer to believe they are autonomous.
When control is invisible, that belief remains intact. People assume their choices are personal rather than shaped. This illusion preserves compliance. Machiavelli observed that rulers who relied on visible force were always vulnerable. Force creates enemies. Unseen influence creates habits. Habits persist even when the original source of power weakens. This truth is uncomfortable because it suggests that freedom is more fragile than people want to admit. Many behaviors feel chosen when they are actually conditioned. Language, tradition, incentives, and fear of social exclusion quietly guide action. Once internalized, these forces no longer feel external. They feel like common sense. This is why unseen power is rarely questioned. Questioning it feels like questioning reality itself. Those who benefit from unseen power rarely need to defend it. Those affected by it often cannot name it. Machiavelli understood that the goal of power is not domination, but invisibility. When power is unseen, resistance looks irrational. Alternatives feel unrealistic. Change feels dangerous. This does not mean unseen power is inherently evil. It means it is potent. It can stabilize societies or trap individuals. The difference lies in awareness. When you can see the forces shaping behavior, their grip weakens. Awareness reintroduces choice. Those who understand power learn to identify what goes unquestioned. They notice which rules are followed without enforcement, which beliefs are defended without evidence, and which behaviors are discouraged without explicit punishment. This observation reveals where control truly lies. Unseen power is dangerous because it persists without confrontation. It shapes outcomes while remaining unnamed, but it is also predictable once recognized. By making the invisible visible, you reclaim agency without rebellion. You do not need to fight power to escape its influence. You need to understand how it works. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was not how to control others, but how control operates when no one is watching. Once you see that, you stop being moved blindly, and that awareness, more than force or ambition, is where real freedom begins.
Outro. The clarity that remains. Power is not a villain or a virtue. It is a force that follows patterns whether you acknowledge it or not. Throughout these truths, one theme repeats quietly. Human behavior is predictable, not because people are evil, but because they are human. They seek security, certainty, and advantage. They respond to perception more than intention, to structure more than sentiment, and to consistency more than promises. Machiavelli did not celebrate these realities, he exposed them. The value of understanding power is not domination, it is awareness. Awareness protects you from confusion. It explains why good intentions fail, why confidence moves crowds, why boundaries matter, and why influence often belongs to those who speak less and observe more. When you see these dynamics clearly, you stop taking behavior personally. You stop expecting gratitude to last, kindness to command obedience, or truth to persuade on its own. You begin to operate with restraint rather than frustration. This is where real control begins. Not control over others, but control over your reactions, expectations, and positioning. Power loses its grip when it is no longer invisible. You may choose to lead, to follow, or to step aside, but you will no longer be naive about the forces shaping outcomes. That clarity is not cold, it is stabilizing. It allows you to be firm without cruelty, patient without weakness, and strategic without obsession. You do not need to apply every truth, you only need to recognize them when they appear. In a world driven by appearances, incentives, and unspoken rules, the person who sees clearly is rarely surprised and rarely cornered. This understanding does not make life easier, it makes it navigable. And in environments where power operates quietly, navigation is often the greatest advantage of all.